Fuck, what was I saying?
Didn't I make you laugh? Didn't I make you smile?
Hi friends, it's Rory, and today it's going to be another one of my throwback reviews. This time for the book Disney After Dark, also known as Kingdom Keepers #1. Now I used to enjoy this series. I believe I only ever got to the third book. I think it's a 5-part series. Don't remember a lot of my emotions with them back then, but I do know that I enjoyed them. And I still enjoyed myself when I read it this time. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, but that's not the point of throwback reviews. The point of throwback reviews is to discuss if a book that I used to love is as good as I remember, and then say if I would recommend it for my nieces and nephews in the future. So let's go ahead and talk about this. As always, there's going to be spoilers for this book, so if you don't want spoilers, don't watch. But yeah. So let's go ahead and discuss kind of the plot of this book. The story of this is that you have the Walt Disney World parks. Now, I am from north of Orlando. I go to Walt Disney World all the time. Literally every other weekend, basically. I'm going freaking tomorrow, the day after I film this. Disney characters and animatronics are able to come to life because there's magic in belief. So it's basically like literally Peter Pan. If you believe in something hard enough, it will exist. But the unfortunate thing is that those characters and animatronics are unable to be seen by regular people. You have to be part of that world in order to be able to see it. And so the villains of Disney and kind of like start to try to take over the park, and they do things like they delay parades, and they have rides break down, and it's starting to put people in danger. And they're also starting to take things from the outside world. So like a big plot point in this is that they stole like 50 padlocks for some reason, and because the cameras can't see them because of the magic, there's no way to prove it was them, but they're going to use that in order to put people in danger. So they want to take over Walt Disney World, and then they want to take over the world in general. So the main bad guy in this is Maleficent, and but along with that, you have the pirates from Pirates of the Caribbean, which is one of my favorite rides. You also have another character that is not a Disney villain. They're just working for Maleficent. So in order to kind of like be able to stop this, because Walt Disney World knew this was going to happen, and so he gave people information on how to stop this. But they need people who are going to be able to see them, and so the Imagineers come up with a system in which they will take 5 kids and they will make them into attractions themselves. So they create a program called the Disney Host Program. And so basically in Magic Kingdom, what it's going to be is they're going to create holograms of these 5 kids, and within regular park hours, those holograms are going to be there, and they're going to be like glorified tour guides. So like Main Street USA, they'll be there and they'll be talking about like different shops that are in there and things like that, and they'll take you down to like the castle, and they'll talk about the castle and basically talk about Disney history and the parks, things like that. That's kind of like what they are supposed to be, which I find really, really funny, because as a Disney person, that sounds really boring. But as a concept in this book, it kind of makes sense. In order for them to be able to see the animatronics through engineering and a little bit of magic, they make it so that these 5 kids are now part attraction and part human. So at night, they get transported to Disney, to Magic Kingdom, and they are then able to see these characters, and they're able to see the good guys and the bad guys. So like the first couple of chapters is kind of like setting up the fact that they're going to Disney at night. So like in that chapter, he sees like Winnie the Pooh and Piglet walking around and chilling, but he also sees, you know, the pirates. And along with that, anything that happens to them at Disney at night also happens to them in real life. So things like Buzz Lightyear's spin, which is a laser game. The laser doesn't hurt you like in real life. Like you can put the laser on your hand and it's fine because it's make believe. But at night, that laser becomes an actual weapon and it can be hurt. So the main character, Finn, he gets shot in the arm with the laser, and it hurts and it looks like a cigarette burn, which is what he blames it on. So let me introduce the five. Finn, like I mentioned, is the main character. He's the one that you're seeing the story from, and in my opinion, he's the best character in this book. He is the leader. Then you have Charlene, Willa, Philby, and Maybeck. Those are all the DHSs, that's what they're called. And so it's their job to try to stop what's happening, to try to stop the villains and get everything back in order. They are guided by an Imagineer named Wayne, who used to be a friend of Disney, and he was kind of put in place at Magic Kingdom by Disney himself in order for in the future, when they needed to address the issues happening, he would be the one to kind of like guide them through it. And I really like Wayne. I think that he's a good character. I think that he's a very interesting like mentor figure. And I listened to this book on audio, and the narrator, made his voice extremely well. Along with those characters, there are two other characters. There's Amanda, who is trying to help Wayne and the DHSs, but she's kind of sketch. So there's a whole big issue of if you can trust her or not. And then there is Jez, who is working for Maleficent. So Maleficent pops up a lot in this book, and she pretends that she's her mother, and so she's on the bad side. But at the beginning, even though you kind of like know she's bad, it's supposed to be like, oh, but we don't know if she's really bad. I have a lot of issues with this book, but I really do enjoy it when I'm reading it. So just like when you're talking about it, this book is not that great. Like really, I feel like the only one of the five who has any character is Finn, and he's the main character, so you should kind of like be able to see him. But just like, I actually do not remember what Charlene's purpose was being there. Willa was just she was barely part of it. She was one of the main five characters, and she was barely part of it. So really, the girls are completely out of there. They don't really matter, which kind of sucks. And I completely like mixed up Philby and Maybeck. Like, I know that one of them was really angry and is like the one that's like, nah, I don't have to put up with this, I don't have to do this, this is BS. And he was just like supposed to be a computer guy. And then I know that the other one had like kind of an Australian accent, and he's just like smart, and that's it. Amanda herself was kind of interesting. I actually like her. So at the beginning, she's just like the friend, she's really interested, but then later on it's kind of like, oh, but can you trust her? And so that's a little bit interesting. Jez, which is short for Jezebel, she is just like very clearly evil from the beginning. Like, they introduce her and she's supposed to be like seductive, which is weird because she's 14. FBI, open up! And she's just like there, and you're like, oh, well, clearly she's evil and she's working for the bad guys. Along with that, Maleficent is really, really weird. So, a big thing about Maleficent's character in this is that when you get close to her, the temperature drops like 50 degrees and it starts to freeze, and like ice. That's her powers, is ice. And it's just like, but the Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty is a dragon, and so she's all about fire. And like the Maleficent in the book does use fire, but they're like icy. She's ice. And I'm like, I don't know where that's coming from. That being said, despite the fact that I have issues with the characters and that the plot is kind of like weird, I do enjoy this book, and I have a feeling that a big reason I enjoy this book is nostalgia. I love Disney, and I go to Disney a lot, but there are some things about Disney are not the same as they were in my childhood and that I miss desperately. So, for example, this is not in the book, but I'm gonna give this as an example. Right now, the Disney shopping area that you can go to that's outside of the parks, and it's free to get in, and it's got a whole bunch of like shops, and it's got some entertainment, and it's got a lot of restaurants, including my favorite restaurant, which is Raglan Road, one of the best restaurants of all time. They call it Disney Springs right now, but it used to be called, back when I was this age, it used to be called Downtown Disney, which I think is a much cooler name. So that's kind of like what I'm talking about. And there was a lot, well, not a lot, but there was enough of that made me feel super duper nostalgic. Like they talked about Toontown, which used to be kind of like, it used to be part of Magic Kingdom. It was the houses of the Disney characters, and it was really, really first time that I went that I do remember. I was 16, and I went for my sweet 16. I went on my birthday because back then you used to be able to get into Disney for free on your birthday, and I have pictures of myself in my yellow coat with my princess crown on in Donald Duck's house. And so I remember Toontown, and I used to love Toontown. What used to be Toontown is New Fantasyland, and specifically the part that used to be the main hub of Toontown is now known as Storybook Circus, which I really, really enjoy. I love Storybook Circus. That's where you ride the Barnstormer, and that's where you ride Dumbo, and it's great, and I love it. Being able to read about Toontown made me just like my heart feel emotions. So Hollywood Studios is honestly a great park. It's one of my favorites. I say as there's only 4 and 3 of them are my favorites. And it's great. There's a lot of Star Wars there now. It's very different from how it used to be back in the day. But back in the day, they called it MGM Studios. And even to this day, I will still slip and I will call it MGM. I know that it's not MGM anymore. I know that it's Hollywood Studios, but I will just slip and call it MGM. And they called it MGM in this book, and I fucking love it. I love it so much. I love it. So I think a big part of it is nostalgia, because I read it and they called all these things by their old names, and it made me feel happy. But along with that, there were several like action bits, specifically when it came to attractions, because there's a part in this, which is honestly one of my favorite scenes in this entire book, where they're going on It's a Small World because they think there's a clue there. And because all of the attractions, you know, come to life, the dolls on It's a Small World start to attack them, which fucking terrifying. Every time I go on It's a Small World, I've only been on it like once since I became an annual pass holder, and every time I go on there, I'm just like, these dolls are creepy. But it's a really good scene because they start to attack and they have to use the lines of the song to figure out what to do. So there's a line in the song that's like, and a smile means friendship with everyone, or something like that. I'm not gonna start singing the song because then I'll be stuck in my head. I know for a fact my mom's gonna want to go on it tomorrow. And so they use the song to realize they have to smile at the dolls, and then the dolls will not attack them. And it's a really, really interesting scene. And because of this, the attraction ends up having to go down for repair and refurbishment. When I went when I was 16, It's a Small World was under refurbishment, and it reminded me so much of the scene that I got a little bit freaked out. The action scenes are good. Like there's that that whole scene at It's a Small World, and then there's a part in Splash Mountain where they are, you know, riding along on the river just as themselves, and then the ride gets turned on, so they're either going to be crushed by the float, the like ride float, or they're going to fall down the last drop and they're gonna die, because despite the fact that they're technically half hologram, when they're there, anything that happens to them also happens to them in real life. So if you fall from a 5-story drop, you're gonna die. And they figure out how to like save them from that. And it's great. I enjoy it. This is a book where if you're a Disney fan, I think you're going to enjoy it. There's a decent amount of action, but if you desperately need to love the main characters, you're not going to really enjoy this book, because the only people that you know a decent bit about is Finn, Wayne, and Amanda. This is a good one for when you're younger and you're not really looking for characters that are gonna like steal your heart. They're more like, oh, I'm young, I don't know what a plot is, so I want a lot of action, which is when I read this book, and so that makes sense. I think that this is a good like standalone. I know that's a series, but it's kind of like a good standalone. They stop the bad guy and that's it. So I'm not going to continue on. I wasn't really interested in continuing it on, and I did enjoy myself, but I don't think I enjoyed myself as much as younger me enjoyed it when I read this book. But now we come on to the main part, the main question that I always ask myself in these throwback reviews, which is, would I recommend this book to be read by my nieces and nephews when they are of the age where this is an appropriate book to read? No. Not because I think it's a bad book, or not because I don't think that they would enjoy it. I think that they would enjoy it. It's got enough action, it's got enough aspects of that. It's got Disney, and my nieces and nephews freaking love Disney. The reason I'm saying no is that this is definitely a dated book. So the thing that I enjoy most, the nostalgia of old Disney, is what I think is going to stop younger people like my nieces and nephews from enjoying this. They've never lived in a world where Disney Springs was downtown Disney. They've never been to MGM Studios, because it was always Hollywood Studios, and they're never going to experience Toontown. I took my eldest niece Nella, who I've mentioned several times. I took her for her 7th birthday to Disney, and she will never get to experience Toontown. And so if she read this book and they talked about Toontown, she wouldn't understand what that meant. Or if I gave it to my youngest niece Emma, who is turning 3. We're taking her to Disney for her 3rd birthday tomorrow. She would not understand what MGM is, because she's only ever going to know it as Hollywood Studios. So this is just a book that I feel if you used to read it, or if you are a big Disney fan, or you've been to Disney long ago, you would enjoy it just because of the nostalgia aspect and the and maybe for the action. But someone who is young is not going to understand some parts of this book. And with that, that's the end of this throwback review. This one has been more casual. I didn't love it like I did with my Magic Tree House throwback reviews, and I didn't hate it like I did with my Avalon High reviews. I was just kind of indifferent and enjoying the nostalgia trip. I will probably do another one of these. Maybe I'll read one in February. I haven't decided that yet, but I will let y'all know if I'm doing a throwback review. I created a playlist for all of these, so if you enjoyed this video and you want to see my other throwback reviews, I hope you guys had a great time with me today. As always, there's a link down below to where you can register to vote. Make your voice heard. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!